Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Hello, one and all. Welcome.
Hello.
Hello, John. Hello. How are you? Didn't expect to see you here.
A
Welcome back once again to the Beard and the Boyo podcast. How are you, John?
I'm rocking.
Let's pretend
And
we didn't just get really depressed about Doctor Who.
yeah, we're recording this literally the moment after we recorded that Timeless Children one, and I am still talking into my sock.
You are still talking into your sock.
The same sock.
What was
in
it? What
fact.
was it called again?
It's my recording sock.
No, but what does it say on the sock? Mr.
Oh, it's Mr.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Mr. Perfect.
Yeah, my
John.
wife bought me that for Christmas, and I'm not letting her forget it.
John, as far as the human race is concerned, you are everybody's Mr. Perfect.
Thank you, love.
Oh, bless you. Topic of debate. I've deliberately kept John in the dark about
I
this.
don't know this. What's the topic of debate?
Simply on the illusion that I'm not sure you'll be privy to this information yet. If you are, wonderful. It means you've already got some thoughts on it. If not, it'd be nice to catch your very first reaction to it. A few days ago, we woke up to the news that we are getting the Zack Snyder cut of the Justice League.
I had heard about that, yes.
For some context, in case you're not privy to what's going on, there's a streaming service coming out called HBO Max, which is sort of going to rival your Netflix, your Disney Plus, but basically everyone and their nans is doing a streaming service now. But HBO Max have obviously been listening to what has been a fairly big chatter on the internet in regards to the Snyder cut of the Justice League. And as far as I'm aware, are prepared to commit to Zack Snyder something like between 20 and 30 million to get his cut of the film finished. What is your immediate reaction to this?
I think it's difficult really to know because let's not pretend that Zack Snyder necessarily equals perfection.
Absolutely not.
I mean, again, I have a lot of respect for the guy. End of the day, he's making more money than me. But ultimately, Batman versus Superman, which was a Zack Snyder film, was a flawed movie. So obviously, one of the things that a lot of people have been saying is yes, Justice League was miles worse than Batman versus Superman. And a lot of people have attributed that to obviously Zack Snyder having to leave because of a personal tragedy and Joss Whedon taking over. But that's not to necessarily say that the Zack Snyder Justice League was a good film anyway.
No.
And for all we know, it was a film riddled with the same problems Batman vs Superman had and more.
Absolutely.
Which seems to be something people have forgotten about. I don't know.
No, it is a very good point to make because you are absolutely right. Batman versus Superman was a flawed film.
I want to go on record as saying I did enjoy it though.
Yeah, that's the point I would like to make. In terms of tone and style, Batman vs Superman is up there with some of the best Marvel movies. Story-wise, it's not on the same page.
No,
flat out not on the same page. But in terms, one thing that I think Warner Brothers think they got wrong with Batman vs Superman was the tone of the movies, like the darker, grittier tone. I think something got really lost in the translation there. I loved the tone of the DC movies.
Yeah, absolutely.
The darker, more, I would argue, more realistically grounded tone than the Marvel films.
Indeed.
I thought was a really refreshing change to the conveyor approach of Marvel getting out these funny, quirky films. I applaud DC for being that different. And I think Warner Bros. Studio direct, the people behind the scenes are very much like, we need to make this more like Marvel. And it just flat out didn't work. I don't necessarily fault Joss Whedon purely for this.
I mean, I don't want to because I love everything else I've ever seen that Joss Whedon did.
Yeah, so he's a very talented director. Obviously, he will have come in with I need to write some funny lines. And apparently there was a significant amount of this film was reshot and stuff. More than anything, I am very curious to see what Zack Snyder's original vision was for this film. There's all kinds of rumours about we were going to see Darkseid, we were going to see Dark Superman. I just want to see all that. Obviously, just because it would then be in line with Zack Snyder's original vision, you are absolutely right. Does that make it good? That remains to be seen. But I can't help but think that so much was changed behind the scenes once Zack Snyder left the project that if they were undone and put back in the original vision, would be a hell of a lot. Would be a significant improvement on what we saw.
And if nothing else, at least we'd finally have a sort of relatively coherent Justice League trilogy as well.
Absolutely, we would.
And you could watch Man of Steel, Batman and Superman, and Justice League back to back, and it would feel like a more consistent, more coherent trilogy that had the same tones and the same kind of focus. Because obviously, I've spent a lot of time mourning for the DC extended universe, to be honest. And like I've got my little headcanon about what it all should have looked like, and if someone just let me loose with a couple of $1 million and a camera, I feel like I could make something really good. But that's just my opinion. But anyway, so in a way, the chance to see something good, like a good kind of Justice League trilogy, is quite an appealing one. Obviously, my main feeling is that Zack Snyder's still going to be fairly limited in what he can work with. Like he's not going to be able to get the cast back to do any reshoots, I would have thought.
Well, it's interesting you say that. Apparently, he has already contacted certain members of cast and crew.
Okay.
And like I say, HBO Max are prepared to put a lot of money behind this to get it done. So I wouldn't say the possibilities are endless.
Yeah.
And obviously, like you say, a certain element of this will be kind of papering over the cracks of the cut that came out that we all got. But never say never is the angle I would take for this at the moment.
What I'm really fearful of is that we're basically going to get sort of a blueprint of what the film would have looked like, and sort of Zack Snyder's hand going, well, yeah, that would have gone there, and that would have happened then, and we're all kind of left to piece it together.
A lost Doctor Who episode that's filled in with storyboards.
Yeah, or in a garage, rather than like a new sort of version of a film, of the Justice League film.
Apparently, he is saying that it is going to be a completely different experience to the one we got.
I mean, that's no bad thing.
Absolutely not. And it is interesting. Apparently, Zack Snyder has not seen the version of Justice League that made it into cinemas.
Oh, that's interesting.
Which is very interesting. Now, one would argue that I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Zack Snyder is not happy with what the Justice League became.
No.
I would argue he will be more determined than ever to see his vision realised.
Yeah.
I would also argue that given we're in a very unique situation that, we're locked down, he's got plenty of time to fire up and to get an editing setup going.
Yeah.
Not implying that he would be editing, but obviously to edit a film, it has to be, a couple of people behind some computers as opposed to getting out cameras and, reshooting a whole thing. We don't know how much material got left on the cutting room floor, so to speak. How much footage is there of like an alternative narrative that could exist somewhere on a hard drive.
Yeah.
It is very interesting when you think about the possibilities. I think first and foremost, I hinted at it before in terms of like the tone and approach. There are moments of Batman vs Superman that make my jaw drop.
Yeah.
Not in terms of like narratively, but in terms of the spectacle that I see on the screen. Obviously, you can't get by just on spectacle. Batman vs Superman proves that you can't get by on spectacle. That doesn't make a good film. But there are moments in that film, and Man of Steel to an extent, that are very powerful moments that are successfully realised through a filmmaker that knows what he is doing. I would argue that moments like Superman being locked in eye lasers with Doomsday, or Batman with his bat signal calling Superman in the heavy rain with his armour on. These moments are quite special, and I would argue are executed better than certain Marvel movies.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I am excited to see more of that. It's no exaggeration to say that moments like this, tonally and stylistically, were heavily diluted in the final cut of Justice League that we saw in cinemas. Even going one step further, the music in Batman vs Superman is up there as arguably the greatest soundtrack of any superhero film we have ever heard. It had Hans Zimmer and Junkie XL doing the score. Junkie XL, as far as I'm aware, did like Mad Max. He did the Matrix trilogy.
Oh, okay.
Like a very techno-y, bombastic sort of score.
That's a very interesting mix, isn't it? Zack Snyder and
the
Techno
point
Bob.
is that worked very well for Batman versus Superman. Again, it all goes into moment, spectacle.
Yeah.
Obviously, when it came to Joss Whedon's cut, he basically fired Junkie XL and brought in Danny Elfman. Now, I feel like Justice League's problems can be summarised by its soundtrack. It's just very meh. It has no identity. It's run of the mill. It does the job. You don't even remember how it sounded.
I can't remember any of it apart from Wonder Woman's theme. I do like Wonder Woman's theme.
Well, that's the point. That was not made by Danny Elfman. Obviously, that was made for that was composed by Hans Zimmer for Batman v Superman.
Yeah.
The point is, I'm going to assume Zack Snyder's going to dig out Junkie XL's score.
I do hope so.
For this film. It's just going to like. I encourage you to go on YouTube. I'll send you the link. Someone's rescored certain scenes from the Justice League.
Oh yeah.
With existing music from Batman v Superman. It just feels better.
Yeah.
Like it obviously, music isn't the be all and end all, but it does a hell of a job at conveying how you're supposed to feel.
I bet it does.
For a certain scene. Certain moments, obviously, from Justice League feel better with this rescored edit on YouTube. I'll send you the clips. Like it's hard to disagree with even these scenes which should be better, and I'm sure will be better in this cut.
Yeah.
Or amplified just with better music behind it. So it's all things to think about. Obviously, is this going to translate to a good story? The icing on the cake would be all this tonal style and music complements a very good story.
Yeah.
And we're sitting here thinking, Warner Brothers, why the hell did you bottle it?
Yeah.
To change the cut of the film so significantly. My prediction, we're going to see a maybe 6 out of 10 film that has similar narrative problems to what we've seen before. But we'll sit there and go, you know what, that was bloody good to watch.
Yeah. And that's it, isn't it? Like, I remember watching Batman and Superman. I've only really seen Batman vs Superman once, and that was in the cinema. And I just remember the whole way through just being glued to what I was watching and just
it fell apart when you started to deconstruct it.
Exactly. The minute you walk out the cinema and start thinking about it, But
in terms of superheroes beating the crap out of each other and spectacle and scale, you can't fault it.
Absolutely not.
And the fact that in Justice League we didn't even get any of those moments.
No.
We had a very wishy-washy, stitched together narrative, and Henry Cavill's awful mustache editing, which just makes him look like a waxwork model. On top of not getting the tone that I personally fell in love with, we then had a very poor narrative to boot. If at the very least we could see the original vision and tone for this film realised, as much as, we'd sit there going, the story wasn't great, I feel like we'll have a much more positive outlook compared to what we have now.
I hope so. I really hope so. I mean, the sad thing is that I've never actually seen the beginning of Man of Steel. But what I have seen of it, it was okay, but there was just a little bit too much property damage to...
I would argue, up until the part where all the buildings started falling down, that was a 5-star movie.
Yeah.
Like, a Superman that questions his own identity and whether he is actually... and a world debating if he is actually there for a source of good. That's a great, grounded, realistic portrayal of Superman.
It's a great idea, and it's a great twist on the character without changing the essence of the character. Hello, timeless child. But
nicely done.
I do feel like the DCEU got off. I even think the cast were really good. I think Henry Cavill's a great Superman.
I mean, this is a broader point because forgive me for interjecting. This is a podcast in itself. They had a better starting platform than Marvel.
Absolutely.
More recognisable characters, better source material, a massive pool of villains that are arguably more famous than the heroes.
Yeah, absolutely.
And an incredible array of casting. We all shuddered when it said Ben Affleck is cast as Batman.
Yeah.
If that sequence where he beats the pulp out of all those villains is arguably the most raw, powerful Batman sequence we've ever had. He is a great Bruce Wayne as well.
Yeah.
With a bit of care and craft, that could easily be a Batman that we consider one of the best.
And like I say, everyone loves Batfleck. Everyone loves Henry Cavill as Superman. Everyone loves Gal Gadot's Wonder Woman.
Aquaman is a huge success. It's made £1 billion on its own.
See, I've not seen Aquaman, but yeah, obviously, again, I hear that Jason Momoa is great in the role,
He's great. He loves
and
it. He
it's
can tell
sort
he's having a ball as he plays it.
yeah, it's sort of because obviously we've lost Cavill and Affleck as Batman and Superman now,
Yeah.
and I just feel like in a way it'll be more painful if the Snyder Cut of Justice League is actually quite good. Because you're like, oh man, could this have been avoided? Like, could we have got more films with this lineup of characters? And you know, I doubt they'll be able to tempt Affleck and Cavill back with anything now. I think that
obviously Robert Pattinson's Batman is already filming.
I'll believe it when I see it. But
like it's already in front of the cameras,
yeah,
so like certain things you can't take back.
Yeah, it almost just feels like it'll be more painful if we. Because at the moment, I was sort of happy just to kind of go forward and forget all about it. You know, it's like I gave DC a chance. I really wanted them to succeed. They didn't. There were many reasons for that. It's painful, but I'm happy to kind of walk away.
Yeah.
Whereas now it's like kind of bringing up old wounds, and you're showing me the world that might have been, and I think maybe I was happier in my ignorance.
The DC universe is almost in this weird purgatory at the moment, where it almost wants to reboot itself, but it's still like limping on with all these standalone films.
Yeah.
Of varying quality. You know, from what I've heard, in terms of like who's directing it, who's starring, like contrary to his Twilight pedigree, Robert Pattinson is a bloody good actor and a decent choice for a Batman. Matt Reeves is the director attached to it. He did the Planet of the Apes films. You know, there are some very talented people working on that film, and it remains to be seen the quality of that film. So the point I'm making is there are films coming out now of varying quality. The Birds of Prey film was god awful, apparently. The point is, DC's limping on. You are absolutely right. If they then show us this outstanding Justice League film, or at the very least, a film that is significantly better than the one we were treated to, the what could have been will sting enormously. Because as far as I'm aware, Ben Affleck was really passionate behind the scenes. Henry Cavill loved the part of Superman. All of them behind the scenes have been tweeting on like Twitter and Instagram and all that, putting their message out there, release the Snyder Cut. They were obviously all very passionate about this project. It's going to be very sad if we see an amazing version of this film that comes out next year and we think, if the studios had just stopped meddling and let these talented people get on with their jobs.
Could be another point to John's depression box.
I'm sorry to keep adding to your point, and it's quite sad because our whole podcast series is based around us moaning about stuff like old men.
Oh dear. But yeah, very exciting, and it's going to be released on HBO Max. Did you say?
Yeah, it's a streaming service.
Right.
At the very least, I'm prepared to pay for a month's subscription to watch it.
You know? Maybe I will.
And it's one of those great marketing play by HBO Max, because I didn't give a monkeys about their streaming service.
I didn't even know it was coming out until...
Absolutely. They're quite common now. I'm starting to... it's losing its exclusivity. This is something that will make me want to download and get a subscription. And I can't fault them. It's a very shrewd piece of, acquisition by HBO Max. Fair play to them. And the fact that they're prepared to support Zack Snyder's original vision... and they haven't handed him a blank check, but they're prepared to significantly support him. I'm excited for it.
Yeah, it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Like, is this... Because obviously there's loads of different cuts of things that people have wanted released over the years. If this works, will other new streaming services sort of start trying this? And will we see the... the Josh Trank cut of the Fantastic Four? Or
it's very interesting to think about it like that. You are
the other...
Right.
I am slightly plagiarising because I did see all this in an article. Might have been Den of Geek, I can't remember. But anyway, if you were the person that wrote that article and you hear me say that, please don't accuse me of plagiarising, because I am trying to credit you. I just can't remember who you were. But it does make you wonder, doesn't it? Like, is this kind of the start of actually fan pressure starting to have an effect?
Think about Deadpool's origins. It was the studio refused to greenlight it, didn't they? And then
that's true, actually. Yeah, I hadn't thought of
that. That test footage, voiced by Ryan Reynolds, of the freeway chase that we see in the first film.
Yeah.
Someone from inside leaked it against the executive producer's wishes.
Yeah.
And it got so much traction on the internet that they went, okay, people want to see this. So it if anything, in a sea of so many TV shows and movies getting it wrong, This is kind of proof that audience pressure does work.
Yeah, and what kind of a world will that unleash, one wonders? Because obviously there's a lot of positives, and I think we're seeing them, but also
Too much
we've
of a
seen
good
them.
thing.
Yeah, we've seen in the past that fans getting what they want isn't always the best thing.
Of course it isn't. Of course it
So
isn't.
yeah, I'll be interested to see how this pans out. But for now, yeah, I to bring us back to the point, I am very excited about this, and I'll certainly be looking to check it out when it does get released.
Fabulous. Fabulous. How much more positive was that one?
Ah, I'm feeling better already.
It feels good to smile again.
It
Ladies and
does.
gentlemen, he's been Boyo, I've been Beard. Thank you very much for listening. By all means, drop in the comments your musings on what you think Zack Snyder's Justice League will turn into. But as always, have a splendid day.
And Mike, get off Twitch.
And Mike, get off Twitch.
Seriously, man.
I know. Seriously. Thank you very much for listening. Cheery bye for now.
Bye.
Beard and the Boyo was recorded in front of a live empty space, starring Jake Saunders and John Bowie.
Also, Mike, get off Twitch.
Also, Mike, get off Twitch.